Today, let's explore together how to approach emotional control through the lens of neuroscience and evidence-based methods. If you've ever felt overwhelmed by intense emotions or struggled to respond rather than react in challenging situations, this discussion may offer some helpful insights. Understanding emotional regulation isn't just about willpower. Recent research suggests it's about training specific brain circuits that can be developed with practice. Current research from multiple universities suggests that emotional regulation involves complex interactions between different brain regions, particularly the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala. A comprehensive meta-analysis examining over 400 participants across multiple studies found that cognitive reappraisal strategies consistently activate cognitive control regions while helping to modulate emotional responses. The research indicates that when we practice specific emotion regulation techniques, we're literally strengthening neural pathways that support better emotional balance. Recent brain imaging studies have shown that the prefrontal cortex plays a crucial role in what researchers call top-down emotional control. This means that the thinking parts of our brain can learn to influence the emotional centers more effectively. A research institution found that cognitive behavioral approaches increase connectivity between the amygdala and cognitive control networks, suggesting that therapeutic techniques create measurable changes in how our brains process emotions. Interestingly, studies have revealed that different emotion regulation strategies activate distinct neural pathways. Acceptance-based approaches, for example, show different brain activation patterns compared to cognitive reappraisal strategies. A systematic review found that acceptance strategies reduced activity in limbic regions by an average of 35%, while reappraisal strategies showed enhanced activation in areas associated with working memory and cognitive flexibility. What's particularly encouraging is that research suggests these brain changes can occur relatively quickly. Studies tracking participants over 8 to 12 weeks found improvement rates of 40 to 60% in emotional stability measures. The research indicates that consistent practice of emotion regulation techniques can create lasting neuroplastic changes, meaning our brains can actually rewire themselves to support better emotional well-being. Now, let's explore some practical approaches that research suggests may be helpful. The first method is what researchers call cognitive reappraisal. This involves consciously stepping back when you notice strong emotions arising and asking yourself if there might be alternative ways to interpret the situation. For example, if someone doesn't respond to your message, instead of immediately thinking they're ignoring you, you might consider they could be busy or dealing with their own challenges. To practice this effectively, research suggests using what some call the pause-label-reframe sequence. When you notice emotional intensity rising, first pause and take a moment to breathe. Then, try to label the specific emotion you're experiencing: anger, disappointment, anxiety, or whatever it might be. Research indicates that simply naming our emotions can activate the prefrontal cortex and help reduce amygdala reactivity. Finally, see if you can reframe the situation from a different perspective. Another approach that research supports is what's called cognitive distancing. This involves imagining yourself observing the situation from a third-person perspective or considering how you might view this situation in 10 years. Studies suggest this activates areas of the prefrontal cortex responsible for abstract thinking and can help create emotional space around challenging experiences. Research also highlights the value of acceptance-based strategies. Rather than trying to change or suppress difficult emotions, this approach involves acknowledging them without judgment while choosing how to respond. Some researchers describe this as treating emotions like weather patterns, temporary experiences that arise and pass naturally. Studies suggest that combining acceptance with reappraisal strategies may be more effective than using either approach alone. For daily implementation, research indicates that consistency matters more than duration. Starting with just 5 minutes of practice in the morning, perhaps visualizing yourself successfully managing challenging emotions, can help prime your brain for better regulation throughout the day. During actual emotional situations, that pause-label-reframe sequence we discussed earlier can be particularly helpful. Evening reflection also appears beneficial in research studies. Taking a few minutes to review moments when you successfully managed emotions, as well as situations where you'd like to respond differently, can support learning and skill development. Researchers suggest that this kind of reflection helps consolidate new neural patterns. It's important to note that research consistently shows that emotional suppression, trying to push emotions away or pretend they don't exist, tends to be counterproductive. Studies indicate this can actually increase physiological stress and often leads to emotional rebound effects. The approaches we've discussed focus instead on acknowledging emotions while developing greater choice in how we respond to them. Let me summarize what we've discussed today. First, emotional regulation involves training specific brain circuits, particularly connections between the prefrontal cortex and emotional centers. Second, cognitive reappraisal strategies can help us develop alternative perspectives on challenging situations. Third, acceptance-based approaches involve acknowledging emotions without judgment while choosing our responses. Fourth, the pause-label-reframe sequence provides a practical tool for real-time emotional regulation. Fifth, consistent practice, even just a few minutes daily, appears more important than longer, irregular sessions. Sixth, combining different strategies may be more effective than relying on any single approach. Remember that developing emotional regulation skills is a process that takes time and patience with yourself. Research suggests that most people begin noticing improvements within a few weeks of consistent practice, with more significant changes often emerging over months. These techniques aren't about eliminating difficult emotions, they're about developing greater flexibility in how we relate to and respond to our emotional experiences. If you find yourself struggling with intense or persistent emotional difficulties, please remember that professional support from a mental health practitioner can be incredibly valuable. These techniques can complement professional care but aren't intended as a substitute for proper mental health treatment when needed. If today's discussion provided any support or new perspectives, please hit the like button. If you'd like to continue exploring mental health topics together, please consider subscribing to our channel. May your emotional journey be filled with greater understanding and gentle self-compassion. Thank you for spending this time learning together today.